Hi, I'm Brad, and with me joins Karl Guttag, which has been on the channel a couple times before, and we're going to talk about CES. I'm going to let you start your thing by yourself because we've been kind of talking about how last year's CES, I know you didn't go, I went, it was very barren, not too good for really AR or VR really last year. And we were talking about this year before both of us went, and I know you were giving a little bit of concerns about whether CES was going to become back to normal or anything. So I'll let you talk about your experience first, and then we'll get into all the different things we saw at CES.
Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah. I know we talked before. It's like if it was going to be another year like last year, I canceled out because I had a few of my key appointments cancel, and it looked like, and then just everybody decided not to go. It's kind of like one person did, and then they all didn't. This year, I was busy as I've ever been. I went from breakfast to dinner for 3 straight days, and then had a little bit of time to run around the floor on Sunday. That was it. Um, I, I think by numbers and by booths, it was about 60% of what it was pre-pandemic. That's the kind of the general word I heard. Um, it was also extremely different for me because venues were all swapped around. There's a giant building there called South Hall that's totally closed, wasn't even in the show this year. And they opened a brand new, and then they had the brand new West Hall, which I guess was open a couple of years ago, but the first time I've been there thanks to the pandemic. And then a lot of things were over at the Venetian and then scattered around in various hotels. Vegas, part of the problem is just getting around, and it's a mess. But as I commented, they had the Tesla cars. They have the loop, I think they call it, between West Hall and Central Hall, which is very convenient because you had to get back and forth there. But it's a silly form of mass transit, if you could call it that. It's you get in a car, they're actually driving it. They said that was their number one question. Are you actually driving it? They say everybody first get in and ask that, and said yes. So the driver is actually there driving the car. They're not even self-driving. It's an insane form of mass transit. Yeah, the VR, like I say, everything was like 60%. I think even the AR VR was about 60% of what it normally was, or pre-pandemic. It was, the thing you have to allow for is, and you, like I said, I keep an Excel spreadsheet. There's probably better ways to do it, but I try to manage, you got to be thinking about where you are in Vegas, because if you're going between things in the central hall or whatnot, you can schedule a 50-minute meeting, 10 minutes of passing. But if you're doing something on the, along the strip, or having to get from the central hall to the strip, you either got to hustle it, catch something. But see, the problem you have is that even if you like Central Hall to Venetian is about a half-hour walk, but it can be an hour ride.
Yeah.
When traffic gets jammed up, and once buses take off, they will not drop you. So you're in pretty bad shape.
Yeah. Basically, as I was saying, last year was no appointments, and this year was like almost 90% for me, like appointments. Similar to you, like the last day, Sunday, I think you said, that was the day I was actually able to even check out a lot of the things, mostly at the Venetian floor, because there was, because I think the AR VR was mostly in Central Hall, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they had a dedicated area in Central Hall. And then Venetian was mostly, I'll call, international shows. They had tons of international booths where they bring in like international small companies. So I started in Venetian. I did my first day mostly in the Venetian and a few hotels in that area. And then I did most of the rest of my time over, really going between suites and Central Hall and then meetings. But that's the thing that people don't get. Like if almost nothing, not a lot happens on the floor. Like if people have prepared demos and all, and I think I got ridiculed, I think, when I talked about AWE, that the little people or the whatnot. I didn't mean anything by that. It's just that if people don't recognize you, because they're not really into it, and you don't get to see the really good stuff. And same thing with suites. A lot of times, almost always the really good stuff, the really good meetings are in suites. Because on a floor, they got to keep moving the people through. Sometimes there are only people who only know enough to show the demo, And that's really what I meant by that comment I made back a few shows ago, was that the people on the floor don't really know much most of the time. If they recognize you, then they probably are a person who knows something. And that was the comment. And you've probably seen the same thing, right?
I was just about to say, I'm totally with you. I think you're totally right on that. Not even just the expertise of the people at the booth, but like even for me, all the stuff I saw like at the private suites at the Venetian were marginally more interesting and exciting than the stuff that they just throw on the floor. So I do agree with you on there 100%.
Yeah, because when you get into detail and you're talking to people and they show you stuff they're not going to show on the floor. You see a lot of stuff in the suites that you don't see on the floor. The floor is stuff that's safe, ready, it's canned. You can't get into a lot of detail because it's designed to move them through. By the way, I saw some other shows. I saw one of the other video shows, and they were all bragging about the fact they got to meet you. And funny enough, they had the same impression I did, because we've never met face to face before.
Yeah.
Until this show, we got to see each other face to face, and their reaction was the same as mine. He's a lot taller than I thought. Everybody thinks you're a little tiny. I think on television or on the videos, you look like everyone thinks you're a tiny kid, but actually you're pretty tall, and therefore you're pretty big compared to what people think you are on the video. Okay, so why don't we get started with a few, get into some of the booths and all. I'm starting with this one. This is one I've written about. I've actually put a post on my blog already. And the reason why I started with this one is this one, it's basically, I've been looking for decades for a non-polarizing material, a material that does not darken, it does not have a very dark state when it begins. Most of the times when you see dynamic dimming, most famously the Magic Leap 2, if you do polarizing, as soon as you polarize, you lose 60% of your light. And we talked about this a lot last time. So I've been for years looking for a material that would dim without involving polarization of the light source or of the image coming through. And so metamaterial has one of those. They also, for whatever reason, I think they've become a stock meme. So I do warn people that, maybe it may or may not be the best stock. I actually said on my blog, I bought a little stock because I was looking for this material. They also got a lot of, I think, raves but in the show, everyone knew him for the clear microwave oven. It really does look good. You don't realize it how much you get blocked by the screen. So what they've got here is this infinitely small mesh. And so anyway, so that was kind of one of my most interesting things at the floor. To go with that, great. Yep. To go with that, the prettiest booth at the floor was probably Magic Leap 2. Certainly the prettiest booth in the AR area. They definitely had a very nice looking booth, very clean demos, very good demos. But going back to that prior thing, the reason why that other thing was so important to me is that they're, it's still 80% light blocking. When you put it on, it's like wearing dark sunglasses.
Yeah.
It does work. They did do some interesting things, like this demo here. Actually, what you see in there is a car, and it's a fairly good demo. It's not as good, I would say, as the Vario. Like I've done the Vario car stuff too, and the Vario is a little more believable than the Magic Leap, but it does do a good job. This demo does take advantage of dynamic dimming. They do adjust it for you and all. Fortunately, being a media guy, and they were very nice to me, I must say, considering I've not written all the most positive things about Magic Leap. They showed me a good time in terms of showing me the demos and stuff and cutting me in, because this is a very long line for this demo.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have been able to see it. I mean, that's the thing. People get a little upset that media pass people get in. But if you're trying to cover 20 people, you can't spend an hour in line.
Yeah.
You just won't do it. You just have to pass it. But anyway, so what you see is this car that's there. So actually what they're showing you on this monitor is the car you see. And they demonstrate the dynamic dimming. It works well. It does well. I'm not against dynamic dimming. Now, one of the problems with that material is it's not particularly fast. It's talking seconds to switch, which is probably good enough for indoor, outdoor use and for general dimming and acting as kind of dynamic sunglasses, but
Right.
not fast enough. If you're going to do this, you have to be at least 60 times a second or 16 milliseconds, which is a good order or two of magnitude faster. And you'd like to be
Mhm.
120 hertz, which is one of the reasons why you use historically, and this has always been true in liquid crystals there's been types of materials like this before, but liquid crystals that are based on polarization tend to switch faster. It's easier to switch polarization than it is to go from light to dark. Anyway, so that's
I would like to actually hop into Magic Leap because I actually did try. This was the first show I got to try the Magic Leap to, and it was at. It wasn't this demo. It was around the corner from this car demo, which I'm very sad I didn't get to try the car demo you tried because my demo didn't have any segmented dimming, and that was like the one thing I asked them was like, I want to see this, and they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have that right now on our demo. Even though they did bring me in the front of the line with the media pass, just like you, they were just like, we have too many people wanting to see this car thing right now, so that stinks. However, I will say, just from like a quick heads up on like what I thought about the Magic Leap 2 from my demo, they basically just sat me down at like a small table, and there'd be a guy across from the table that was pretty much inserted there, see through, because he has like a small array of cameras that are, so when you like would move your head, there'd be some actual like real-time parallaxing, because where he's at, there's an array of cameras doing this like kind of like these 3D imaging thing live with him. And they would have a smaller version of the car, and he would put on the glasses and with the remote, and they'd be able to actually, we would both be able to interact with the same car on the same table from wherever this guy is. He didn't tell me where he is, and it was pretty neat. Like it was. I mean, it did the demo pretty well. I was kind of impressed with the small. It wasn't like laggy or anything. The one thing I felt weird about from the Magic Leap, again, I'm not much of an AR person, so I haven't like tried too many systems, but I remember trying the Loomis, which I'm sure we're gonna talk about later, and thinking how good the color uniformity was. And with the Magic Leap 2, I felt like there was like a seam almost, where like some things above us, the middle, were like way weird colored compared to the bottom.
I wasn't able to do that, but yeah, in the prior show, AWE, I think I mentioned I didn't get to control the content. There was a second demo that sounds like you didn't see that was on the right of this demo, in the right corner as you look at the picture that's there. As over anyway, the over in the right corner. That demo had some white or light areas in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you could definitely see their color uniformity was pretty far off in that headset. I don't know, that's a one-off.
Right.
But in that particular headset, you could tell because there was a lot of white, a lot of light color on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And you could definitely see the color rainbowing like you tend to see in diffractive waveguides.
Right.
Yeah, Loomis is just, it works on a whole different physics and doesn't have those problems. Every diffractive waveguide I've ever seen, be it holographic or diffraction, Bragg grading, whatever they do, they play all the games and they all are a little different, but all of them have a really hard time with uniformity, color uniformity. And it gets worse as the field of view gets bigger, because if you think about it, the lights bounce in a waveguide, the light's got to jiggle down down the light, and it's actually got to cross other gratings. It's crossing at some point it's crossing stuff. So as the field of view gets big, that light's gotten lots of little damage as it goes across, and it never, uniformity always drops, and particularly as the field of view gets bigger.
And the one thing I am kind of curious about is because like all these demos they're kind of showing off are also applicable for a system like Vario or any mixed reality thing coming up. So I'm wondering, like we both talk about how like optical AR is good for like stuff that requires machinery or like things that you just cannot rely on video latency or whatever. But like for telepresence, which seems to be a lot of what they're showing off, I'm not sure how much their system is worth it compared to like a VR mixed reality system.
Yeah, I think telepresence it's going to be tough. You know, if you're trying to make a like somebody standing in your room,
yeah,
there's a lot of complexity. It's the thing I say about trying to do games with optical pass-through AR. You can kind of do a square room that has fairly simple features in it, As soon as you start throwing couches and other stuff and windows and weird octagon shaped rooms and all that kind of stuff, it gets really hard to conceive of a game that you wouldn't be better off to just go totally VR, totally control what the room looks like. I sometimes say, better if you're playing a basketball court and it's like L-shaped sometimes and and long and skinny and fat, you'd never be able to figure out how to play with somebody doing that. You need the same court, you need the same thing. So I think from a game perspective and from this interaction perspective, I also tend to see where AR gets the biggest use is hands-free. You know, we talk a lot about, well, are you going to pinch and do stuff? Well, that's kind of good. You know, you don't have to bring controllers with you, but if you're pinching and doing this stuff and you got to keep your hands visible, well, you've kind of defeated the whole idea of hands-free or the AR experience, a lot of what AR promises. So a lot of it's hands-free. I saw like Argo, which is done by, I don't know if you saw them with DigiLens. Did you see
I saw the press release for that. Yeah.
Saw the press release. Okay. Well, they have much more in voice recognition. They're starting to, and this was true of GoldenEye, which is the was it RealWear? The RealWear guys, one of the things they emphasize is voice command because that now lets you free up. It means you're simpler too, though. You got to be simple. It's more like next and picture and photograph and take snot or whatever it is, whatever these keywords are. But you do that as opposed to having to squeeze and push things. Because if you're doing that, now all of a sudden you've tied up your hands again, defeated the whole purpose of it. Right. It also goes back to, like Meta has been doing a lot of work with sensors. They made a thing in the Meta Connect where they talking about have all these wrist sensors. That's a big deal, and is where they try to detect your wrist.
Yeah.
So you wear a watch. You basically wear this watch band with a big thing on it and a lump. And what it's doing is trying to read your nerves, trying to read your muscles and stuff. And yeah, that kind of works. It's kind of magical how it works. But then once again, you're having to work your hand and what different, did you really solve the problem? So there are uses for that kind of stuff. But I do wonder, does it work out in the end when you try to apply it and try to actually, the world changes when you actually try to do something with these products and you find out, well, the registration isn't quite good enough. It's good. It's good. Yeah, it's pretty good, but I can't pick things up or I can't use it to do A, B, or C.
I think I'm kind of glad you brought up the, I think it used to be called the Mayo armband. They bought the company that was working on that thing, Meta did, and they've been trying to put it into a watch, like you said. And I kind of want to talk about one of my things I saw, even though I can't pull up pictures for you. And it was called the OpenBCI Project Galea headset. What they do is it's pretty much a normal Vario kit, but the entire head strap and bands, they put like EKG sensor, EEG sensors, a bunch of tons of different sensors. And the idea is they want to do stuff like be able to figure out with these plurality of sensors, like your emotional state, your whether you're meditating and stuff. And actually, this company was funded pretty well by Valve earlier on as well, because they wanted to use it for figuring out player states when they're making games and doing like very good play testing data from like mental state, whether something's being overwhelming to a player or whatever. And I got to try that.
Interesting. Tobai, you may have heard of them. They do eye tracking and stuff.
They also
one of their things was to when you go to a supermarket or something, they want to know where you're looking.
Yeah.
Because that's data that they want. They want to know what you're looking at, so they know what's attracting your eyes. So it's a way of measuring kind of advertising or how much stuff.
I'm so glad you brought that up too, because I was in the room with a bunch of different people that were all wanting to see this headset because it's kind of been like. It's kind of become like fully real this year, kind of for the first time sort of thing. Like they've been doing like 3D printed prototypes and stuff. But one of the people in the room was literally like talking to the project, the OpenBCI guys, and was like, we can use all this data for figuring out what ads to throw at people. And he was serious. Like he was serious.
It all comes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody is secondary revenue stream. How do we find more revenue streams?
And the guys, because this system's like not consumer, they're not targeting that. They're targeting like research or like they're not worried about that right now. So the guy's like, yeah, we're not really looking to do that right now, trying to put him down nicely. But the one thing I wanted to know about that system that reminds me of the armband we were talking about with Meta is they're using a lot of the same type of sensors for the armband to like calculate your muscle impulses and stuff. And one thing I kind of complained about was the latency. They had live graphs of everything. It was all running wirelessly. They had like a little Arduino kit that was sending data to the PC wirelessly through Wi-Fi. And when you would do stuff like bite down or clench your different parts of your face, it could track that. But there was maybe a 1 second or 2 second latency of when it would show up on the graph. So I was like, why couldn't you do it wired? And they told me whenever they tried to do it wired, there'd be too much interference from the actual wire itself. And which is kind of interesting because that's apparently why the watch project from Meta has been delayed multiple times. Is they want to make a watch one day that they can snap on that Myo armband, but every watch that they get close to productizing causes too much interference for that sensor that goes around the wrist.
Yeah, you can't have that kind of delay. By the way, that actually reminds me of something in this demo. Also involved in Till 5 does something similar, I understand. But one of the things they showed is that they could slow their frame rate down that they're updating. When you move your head and stuff like that, the headset apparently is automatically what I call warping. It's basically a back end warp. So what they can do is with the data that's in the headset already, and I'm pretty sure Magic Leap shows that. I know Jerry is one of her big demos is to show you that the thing can still warp and deal with a certain amount of range. Mm-hmm. Once again, to cut down it's part of the big reason for needing that is not so much so you can send only 10 frames a second or something. It's so that you can really try to make sure you get instantaneous response when you move your head. That's really important. You get more than about a 60th of a second, and the human starts to get a little out of sync with what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
One final thing I just wanted before we move on, just to finish off the Galea, because I think this is a good topic. I was going to do a video on it, but I'm not sure. It's a little of a complicated thing to do a video on, so I'm glad to cover it here. But the final thing I wanted to say was the thing. If you ever look it up after the show or whatever, the thing looks like a very uncomfortable mess of sensors. Like honestly, it looks like a face hugger or something from Alien.
Yeah.
But when I put it on, I was actually quite impressed that it wasn't as uncomfortable as it looks, which I know that doesn't sound like praising it or whatever.
They say damning with faint praise, but yes.
Yeah, it was actually way more comfortable than I thought it was. And the one thing that demo I got to try was they're trying to gamify therapy. Like, let's say you can't move your face anymore. The thing they put me in was there was this cube, and you would have to make different muscle responses with different parts of your face to try to get a certain amount of points rotating this cube in certain ways. And it was an interesting thing, and I can see it going somewhere for these really niche things. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that one concept.
That's good.